I think the biggest decision was just saying, like, life is not worth living if you don't get out there and try it. If you don't hustle for it, if you don't say that you really want something or that you don't fully commit to it, then how do you know whether or not you'd be successful? I knew that the only way to be truly great is to do something truly daring, something that really scares you in order to be successful.
Welcome to the Go Hunt Life Show, hosted by Todd Nevins.
This is Todd Nevins, and I explore stories about people that had seemingly normal lives and careers going, but they pulled the ripcord and blew up their comfort bubbles to hunt down their life that they had always dreamed of living. On the show today, I speak with Katie McKenna, and she didn't pull the ripcord to follow the life that she had always dreamed of living. She had the ripcord pulled on her. 10 years ago, she was working in finance because her dad and her brother told her it would be a very good job for her. She planned to work for 5 years, save a bunch of money, and then finally do what she was really meant to do. But one morning, she went on a bike ride, and at a stoplight, she signaled to a semi-truck driver that she was turning right. The driver didn't see her. The light turned green, Katie started pedaling turning right, and unfortunately, so did the truck. I catch up to Katie 10 years after that tragic accident, and we discuss her life since that October morning and how she is now a motivating force helping people get over trauma. But she's also motivating people that may not be living their own authentic life to stop waiting to be run over by a truck before they start chasing down what they are truly meant to do. It starts with one small incremental change at a time, which is exactly how she got from laying on that street to training for her third half marathon. Shout out to Kyle James, podcast episode number 77, for introducing me to Katie. And everyone, please keep these incredible stories coming my way. You can reach me at gohuntlife.com. My conversation with Katie McKenna starts right after a word from our sponsor. This episode is sponsored by PrintDirtCheap.com. Jeff Chrisman, the founder of Print Dirt Cheap, started his business the way most companies begin, with grit, determination, and a vision. And now, a decade later, he's built his company into an online printing powerhouse. If I've handed you a business card in the last 4 years, it was printed by Print Dirt Cheap. And the decals all over my laptop, they printed those too. They print and ship over 30 categories of printing products, from business cards and decals to banners, company letterhead, restaurant menus, and a ton of direct mail pieces. And they have just rolled out an entirely new website, ensuring that your online user experience to place an order is simple and fast. And when you place that order, use promo code LIFEHUNTER for $10 off. And Jeff has just launched Success Hackers, which is a global group of tenacious entrepreneurs that share the latest tips, tools, and hacks into growing a business. Check it out at facebook.com/Success Hackers. Katie, thank you for jumping on the show today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm so delighted to be here.
Where are you located in the world? And if you were to walk outside, describe what you would see.
I live in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, and if you were to walk outside of where I live or where I am right now, you would see beautiful, low-slung, kind of 3-story buildings, heavy traffic, probably people walking around. And around the corner, there is a bar called the Blind Barber, which you can go into for delicious cocktails and usually high fives if you're a nice person.
The Blind Barber. That is
Yes.
Awesome. How old are you? Are you married, and do you have kids?
I am 35 years old. I am unmarried, but I recently got engaged.
Cool.
And I don't have any children as of yet, but I'm very hopeful.
Nice. What is your profession and primary ways that you make money?
Currently, I tell everyone that I'm a bit of a slashy. So I am a motivational speaker. I am also a writer, and I'm a philanthropic consultant and also a life coach.
That is a full plate. You did not always do this for a living, hence the reason why we are on the call today.
Yeah.
Take me back to your life over 10 years ago. Go back to 2007. Where were you living and what were you doing?
I was still working. I was living in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. I can't let go of that place. I can't quit it. And I was working as a mutual fund internal wholesaler. So I was working in finance, doing sales, making, about 100 calls a day, reaching out to financial advisors, doing the job that my dad and my brother had told me would be a very good call for me. So kind of took their advice into something that didn't exactly feel right, but felt like the right thing because everybody else told me it was.
Did you feel like you were living their expectations and their life or yours?
I definitely felt like I was living other people's expectations, that the end goal, especially living in New York City, is to make a lot of money and to be successful. And that's what I thought that success looked like. And I was really good at it, which was awesome, but it didn't feel like me. But I thought, I was kind of in it. I was doing it. It was going just fine. All that I had to do was just to kind of get through it. And then at some point, I'm sure that my life would switch and I'd be able to find something else that might give me more fulfillment. But
did you have a game plan or a time frame in mind? Like, get through it tells me like you were thinking, okay, 5 years, I'll make a bunch of money and then I'll do what I really want to do, or what was the plan?
Todd, that's exactly right. Like that was my thought. I was like, okay, I can stockpile some money and I was 24 at the time. So I was like, I'll be 29 and I can kind of figure it out then, just kind of like, let's suck it up for 5 years. And then when I'm almost about to be 30, that's when I'll start making some real decisions about my life.
I normally talk to people that had this decision and pulled the ripcord on themselves, where on a spreadsheet people were saying, what are you doing? What are you quitting this life for? And to do something else. Why would you do that? You actually had the ripcord pulled on you. So take me back to the morning of October 2nd, 2007, when you set out on your way to work.
So it was a beautiful, crisp, gorgeous October morning, bright blue skies, sparkling sunshine. And I tried to either ride my bike 10 miles or go for a run for 5 miles every morning. So I walked out my door, got on my bike, did my 10-mile ride. And as I was finishing up the ride, there was this stunner of a sunrise. And I just felt like I needed to see it in order to have the most perfect day, just set myself up for a lot of joy. And I was on this sort of busy road and I was at a stoplight and I indicated that I was going to turn right. And there was a truck on my left-hand side. And then there was a Mazda behind that truck and neither one of them had their blinkers on. So I decided to take a wide right turn, and sadly, the truck that was on my left-hand side didn't see my indication, didn't have its indicator on, but it was still turning right. And I found myself within seconds being run over by an 18-wheel truck.
So you got knocked over. What wheels ran over you? What happened? You were knocked over and laid on the pavement, and then here came the wheels over you?
So what happened is that the cab of the truck missed me narrowly, only by centimeters. And the motion of the truck kind of knocked me over. And then I did go underneath the first 4 wheels of the 18-wheeler. And then there was a break. And unfortunately, the truck wasn't able to stop. So I was run over by the last 4 wheels of the truck.
When you were laying there, did you see the second set of wheels coming your way?
I did. What happened was that the body and the mind are amazing things. And when I knew that the second set was coming, I just said to myself, God, no, please let him stop. And when I knew that he wasn't, I actually braced my abdominal muscles in order to try to save my organs. And then I watched with my eyes open the second set of wheels running over my body. And I felt the thwap of the mud flaps, like the wind in my face. I can remember it. I felt the gravel in my back. It was unbelievable.
What did it sound like?
It sounded like the machine engine of the truck just being so close to your face. Like when you are in a movie, when you're watching a movie, those moments when you're in a movie, when you're watching a movie and it's like all the noises of trucks rolling past you in a film. It was like that, but with the echoes inside of your ears. And I actually heard my bones crack as it ran over my body. And I felt I heard the thwapping of those mud flaps. And then there was this like booming silence, if I can say that. It just felt like it enveloped me. There was not a noise that I could hear. And then it was as if seconds later, my entire world cracked open. And it was just a cacophony of everything else that had been going around there was beeping horns, people screaming, me screaming. And then suddenly I kind of had to acknowledge in a real way that this was not a nightmare. This was not a daydream. This couldn't be undone. This was actually my life.
Did you think you were dying right there?
I was pretty sure that there was no way that someone would get run over by an 18-wheeler and still live. I couldn't wrap my head around it. The idea that somebody would survive it. So during that moment, because I was so afraid of dying, I wound up only letting myself blink my eyes about 40, as a few times as I could. I tried to not close my eyes because I thought that if I closed my eyes, then I would die. I was sure that if I wound up giving into it, that would mean that my life would end in that moment.
And it ran right over your midsection, like your stomach.
Yeah. So I broke all of my ribs. I punctured my lungs. I tore up my organs. I fractured my pelvis in 5 places. So it was just basically from right below, like right at chest level. So you could actually like see where the damage was on my body because of the width of the tires.
So you're laying there on the pavement and people saw it happen. They
Yes.
jump out, they run to you. What are they saying to you to try to calm you down or keep you awake?
They wound up, they asked me for my mother's phone number, or my parents' phone number, which luckily somehow or another I remembered. I'd stayed conscious.
Did?
Yeah. There was a phone number. The way that my mom used to give us, like the way to remember was in a song. And literally here I am on the ground and I'm singing that song, the little song to remember the numbers. And this woman called my parents' phone number and left them a message. And I remember just thinking to myself, if my mom doesn't pick up, then I'm going to die. I'm going to be completely lost. I know it. And this woman, her name was Giselle, she sat with me on the ground and took my hand. And after she had called my mom, and she just said, she's like, it's going to be okay. Don't worry. The ambulances are coming. You're going to be okay. Her boyfriend set up flares around the site where I was laid out. And then this completely miraculous thing happened. A man pulled up in a white Mazda, in a Camry, and he was wearing a Madras shirt and cargo pants and a New York Yankees hat. And he was Hispanic and he was older. And he came over and he put his hand into mine and he said, listen to me. I'm a pastor. I've spoken to God and you're not going to die today.
Whoa.
Yeah.
And you believed him.
Well, I asked him if he promised, and he said that he promised, and he was the only person who said that I wasn't going to die. So if that guy, listen, if God had told him something, I was going to listen.
You absolutely should have. So you're laying there motionless. Could you could not move your legs, I'm assuming. No. Could you move your arms? Like, what could you move other than your eyelids?
I could move my arms, but not by very much. It's because of what happens in those kinds of traumas is that your body winds up, it has to take all of its power to kind of take care of those other parts of, or it's either all the energy goes to the brain and to the parts of the body that are hurting to try to fix it. Mm-hmm. I could move my arms, but not really. Like they just felt like they were made of cement, and I couldn't move my legs. I couldn't move my body. My bike had actually been embedded. The gear shift was embedded into my side. And so I couldn't move my body at all, basically, until the EMTs. I couldn't feel my legs. So I couldn't feel anything from my body below my rib cage. So I just assumed that I was paralyzed.
Mm-hmm. You get in the ambulance and you're taken to the hospital. Do you remember the ambulance ride?
I do remember the ambulance ride. I remember I kept begging the EMTs for morphine, and they were like, we can't give you morphine because you need to know the amount of pain that you're in when you get to the hospital. And I asked them what hospital they were taking me to, and they said a hospital that was very close by but was not very good. And I told them that I had patient's rights, which is something that we should all know. If you are ever taken in a hospital, in an ambulance, you have patient's rights to tell them what hospital you would like to go to, and they have to take you there. And I told them that I wanted to go to the best trauma hospital. And they wound up taking me to that trauma hospital. But they actually said, they were like, you're probably going to die on the way there. And I said, I didn't care.
Wow.
Yeah. But while we were going to the hospital, the most incredible thing happened, which was they got lost on the way there and they had to stop and ask someone for directions. I don't know how or why. And I actually screamed out while I was in the ambulance, I'm going to kill myself, which was ridiculous because I was in the midst of dying.
Anyway.
Like, what a good threat, Katie. That really got him, you know?
Oh
so
my
ridiculous.
God. You get to the hospital and I'm assuming you immediately go into surgery.
Yes. Yeah. I was taken in to the ER. They were ready for me. So I was surrounded by doctors, and there was one doctor who was with me, and I asked her, you know, am I going to live? And she told me probably not. And she told me that if I had anything to say, I should probably say it, and that she would tell my family and my boyfriend. And that was an incredible moment of a doctor telling you that this would probably be the last things that your eyes would see, the last air that you would breathe, the last moment that you'd be interacting with other human beings.
What did you say?
I told her to tell my parents that I love them and that I was sorry and that they were amazing, and to tell my boyfriend I was sorry about the fight that we got into, to tell my friends that I love them, just to tell them that I had lived a really good life and that I love them very much.
What did you think on the other side of that when you woke up?
I think that I knew that there was no good reason for me to be alive, that every moment that I lived from now on was bonus, that I was absolutely dancing in the cherry on the sundae on top of my life, and that I owed it to myself and to that girl who was terrified of dying to live it completely to the fullest.
That was your first thought, but then that changes, I'm guessing, when you start going through recovery and rehab.
Yeah.
Did that spirit stay with you the whole time?
Did I ever? I wound up feeling really sorry for myself a good bit of the time just because the pain was so intense. And I was on about 300 milligrams of Oxycontin a day and I had fentanyl patches and a morphine pump because of how much pain I was in. And I was also told by doctors while I was going through the process that I was probably never going to walk again. And that felt incredibly destabilizing and really, really scary. And I think that there was that fear, but I never lost that sense of gratitude. I don't think I understood that I was still living in this bonus, and it kept me relatively positive throughout the entire process. There were definitely some dark days. Like I'm not trying to say that there were some very, very dark days, but I was able to keep myself relatively okay for most of the time. So, but during those dark days, it was ugly. It was not a good look. Definitely not a good look.
You described the pain, or you said that you were in such pain. Like I'm thinking, what didn't hurt? Like your bones, your organs, everything had to. Did it hurt to breathe?
It did hurt to breathe. Yeah, because when your ribs are broken, every breath becomes torture. There was no relief. And in sleep, I wound up, I'd have nightmares. So there was never a moment that I was not in devastating pain. And I also had, the only things that I don't think didn't really hurt were my legs, because I still had no feeling in them. So that was kind of, I guess in a weird way, that was helpful. But I also was conscious of the fact that I didn't have any feeling in them, and that was terrifying.
How far into rehab did you have a glimmer of hope that you would in fact walk again?
It took a pretty long time. I thought that it would just wind up that my pelvis would just would almost like turn into dust if I did try to walk again. I'd say that it was probably about it was 5 to 6 weeks after my accident that I was able to sit upright.
Okay.
And then it was I'd say about it was about a month into my rehab that I thought maybe I'd be able to walk again aided with that. I would be probably disabled for the rest of my life, but I would be able to get around, not in a wheelchair, maybe with a walker or with canes.
How long before you left the hospital?
I was in the hospital for 2 months, 2.5 months. And then I was with my parents, my sweet, lovely parents, in their home for another 4 months, where they were just it was like in-home hospital care.
At the end of that 6 months, what condition were you in at that point? Were you walking at all? Like when did you put weight on your legs?
I would put weight on my legs with a walker or with canes most of the time. Like that I was actually pretty good at, but I could never walk without being aided. I was a little bit of a fighter, and I decided to go back into work after those 6 months. So I was able to walk relatively well, but it was in an excruciating amount of pain. Yeah.
Are your hips artificial, like metal or?
No, yeah, no, luckily it's just a plate. So I have a plate that fuses all of my hips together, so that you can still see the pieces of my hip bones, that they look like, usually if you look at hip bones, they look like kind of like two circles, and that they're right next to each other. So both of my hips look like crushed ears. That's kind of what they look like as if it's something that as if you had something circular and it had been run over by a truck. That was kind of what it looked like. But they're not artificial. It's just this one plate that holds everything together so that they don't float.
Support for this podcast and the following message comes from Click Placement, a digital agency designing Google AdWords and pay-per-click marketing strategies for startups, small businesses, and even people building a side hustle. Hit up clickplacement.com to start a conversation. If you would like to personally support the Go Hunt Life podcast, go to patreon.com/Go Hunt Life to make a donation.
So we started our conversation even before we hit record on this, that I talked to people who pulled the ripcord on themselves because they didn't feel like they were living their authentic life. And you mentioned earlier in our conversation that you were doing something and that you just kind of had a time frame on. After this tragic event, you went back to that role. When did you transition out of that into your current life?
Well, it was definitely a long transition, and I think that was because of what was happening in the world and in the markets at that time, because there weren't a lot of kind of new jobs for me to get. But what I started to do immediately was I started to really lean into the creative side of my life, and I decided that I would never again work on solely something that had to do just with making money. I started to write a book, and that wound up making sense of every part of that day job that I was kind of doing. But after I started writing and more opportunities kind of presented themselves, I made a decision that I couldn't work in corporate America anymore, and that it was not worthwhile for me to take this lovely life that I had been gifted and to doing something that I didn't care that much about, that wasn't doing good, that wasn't making the world better for having me in it. So I kept on writing, and I started to work in nonprofit, and that felt like it would be a way to sort of help other people, but it wasn't tactile enough. I wasn't doing enough to kind of be the person that I really wanted to be. So about a year ago, I quit my job, and I have been working on being a motivational speaker and a coach and doing this philanthropic consulting, which has been the hardest but the most meaningful job I've ever had in my entire life. The impact that I've been able to have on other people and how they see the world and how they approach their traumas and their challenges has been so incredibly life-giving and so meaningful. It's been really incredible, but it was all a series of small bites and little victories that sort of got me to this space to feel confident and comfortable enough to say, I'm doing this whole hog. Like, I'm not going to just do this half time. I'm going to do this full time.
And that was a year ago that you went full time?
Yes. Yeah.
What was the biggest significant decision that you made to get you to that point of going all in a year ago?
I think the biggest decision was just saying, like, life is not worth living if you don't get out there and try it. If you don't hustle for it, if you don't say that you really want something or that you don't fully commit to it, then how do you know whether or not you'd be successful? I knew that the only way to be truly great is to do something truly daring, something that really scares you in order to be successful.
And 1 year later now, what has been the best decision that you've made over the last year?
I think the best decision was not to try to take another full-time day job. That was absolutely the best decision. Even when money was tight, even when I was worried about, healthcare and things like that, to not just give in and say, I know that I could work in sales. I know that I could work for a nonprofit, but giving myself a real honest to God shot at being successful has been amazing, because I've actually started to believe in myself in the same way that I've always believed in others. And I have true faith that I think that I will be successful at this, and that all I have to do is just not give up and to continue to try and to keep on having faith in myself and supporting others and understanding that this is a mission-driven thing. This isn't just about me. This is about helping other people.
And you published your book, appropriately titled How to Get Run Over by a Truck.
The first line is, my first recommendation is to ride a bicycle. So that's the move.
Okay. Excellent.
Spoiler alert.
Step one. All right. So you published the book 9 years and 2 days from the day of your accident. What was the true motivation to write that book? Because, man, writing a book is hard and time consuming, and there is no guarantee of any sort of payoff when it's all said and done. What kept you going to write that book?
Absolutely. Well, what kept me going was the biggest thing was old Katie. I kind of changed the book, walks through the processes of going from old Katie to new Katie, because I think that when you go through a trauma, that you become a different person. It does change you. And what the biggest motivation was that I felt like old Katie had a story to tell. And she was a fighter, and she worked really incredibly hard in order to allow for me to have this life. And I just think that it's a really important story to tell. And I think that it could help others. And there were definitely some valleys while I was writing the book. The book got rejected over 100 times. I sent it out to over 100 agents. I knocked on doors. I went to publishing houses. And the thing that kept me going was not fame. It was not money. It was that I knew that old Katie had a story to tell.
You dealt with 100 rejections on a personal, tragic incident in your life. That's not just 100 rejections on a sci-fi novel.
I know.
I mean, this is a personal thing. Come on. You dealt with 100 people saying, yeah, your story just isn't compelling enough.
Oh my gosh, yes, that is exactly what it is, Todd. That's so insightful. And it was so hard. It was like people just being like, hey, Katie, so your life is not that interesting. We don't think you're that cool, and no one is ever going to buy it. It was definitely soul crushing. That was really, really hard. I remember I would just go, I'm a crier by nature. So I would just be like, oh, thanks. Okay, no problem. And then just casually be weeping into my pillow for hours, and then just wipe my face off and be like, okay, you know what? It's just like the doctor who told you were going to die. It's just like the doctor who told you you were never going to walk again. They don't know you. So go out there and make your future. You just need to find one person who believes in you as much as you believe in you, and you will be successful.
You found that one person, and you've published it. And so now, how long ago did you publish it?
It was about a year and a half ago.
Okay. And so since then, what's some of the feedback that you've received from complete strangers who you've impacted?
It has been some of the most moving things I've ever read. There are people who are going through cancer who have said, I had been feeling so lonely and so scared and so overwhelmed. And I'd been moving from laughing to crying and not understanding what to do with these feelings. And your book gave me hope. it made me feel like I was less alone, that I wasn't the first person to feel this, and that I wasn't the first person to go through this, so I can do it. I've had friends who have lost parents who were hospitalized, and that they've said that it made them understand their parents better. I've had feedback from people who have said that it's made them believe that they can write a book, that they know that they can be successful, that they don't need to give up on themselves. It's made people be more understanding of friends or family or anyone who's going through a hard time, and had them learn how to be better and more loving and kind to them. And there's just been people who said that they couldn't stop reading. Like the best feeling ever is that when someone said that they sat in a chair and they took a full weekend and they stayed up until 4 a.m. on Sunday in order to make sure that they finished it before the end of the weekend, because they didn't want for it to end, that they couldn't stop laughing and crying, and that they felt like we were best friends, which I was like, that's an amazing feeling. We are best friends.
That is incredible. Wow. All right. So you're in your mid-30s, and since you were in your early mid-20s, you've been defined as that girl that got run over by a truck. How do you feel about being defined in that way?
That's such a great question. I feel like even more than the accident, I think of myself, the way that I feel confident and comfortable being defined is by being seen as brave, as being seen as the things that define me are being relentless, being a fighter, never giving up, and being strong in the face of grave danger and pain, and of not letting that beat me, not letting it steal my smile. That's the thing that I'm really happy to be defined by.
How are you today from a physical perspective? Can you can walk, run, bike, swim? Do you have any limitations physically?
I do. I'm not able to run, and I can't bike because sadly my PTSD is pretty strong. So I for a while I was reliving the accident about 40 times a day. So the bike really is a big trigger for me. So I wind up just letting that be its own thing. But I am able to swim, and I can't run anymore. I used to be like an all county runner, but I can't run anymore, but I do power walk. So what I do now is that I actually do power walking or elliptical half marathons.
Oh my gosh.
I set myself up in the gym. I'm actually training for one. Today is day one of my third. And I set myself, in a couple months, I'll set myself up at the gym and elliptical 13.1 miles and look like the most ridiculous human who is at the gym at that period of time. And I love it. I really do. It's the most fun.
What are your interests outside of talking about getting run over by a truck and training for a half marathon? What else do you do?
Todd, that's it. That's all that I do. No, I'm a huge music fan. I love going to live music. I love to cook. I'm not really great at it, but I'm medium sized, so I'm working on it. I'm like a big wino. So I love going to wineries. I love learning about wine. In general, I'm just an aggressively curious person, and I'm very easily delighted. So kind of anything that's new or interesting, I love getting into.
Awesome. What are you focused on in the next 6 months besides your third half marathon?
Well, I'm focused in on I'm getting married pretty soon, or hopefully soon, and also of building out this speaking business. It's been a real joy to kind of connect with other people and to see my message having impact. So that's been my biggest focus, is really building out this business. And last year I was able to do 40 talks, and this year I'd like to do about 50. So we're on track.
Incredible. What is your advice for somebody sitting there in their cubicle right now, or on the elliptical in the gym, listening to our conversation? What advice do you have for them where they're thinking, man, I think that there's something bigger. I'm meant to do something bigger, but I've been in this job for the last 15 years. It's what I've known as. It's what I've got my identity all wrapped around, but I really want to do something bigger. What is your advice to them, as opposed to waiting for them to get hit by a bus, run over by a truck?
I would say the best way for you to approach anything in life is by small bites and little victories. I think that if you want to make a change, it doesn't have to be the biggest change. It does not mean that tomorrow you need to quit your job, that you need to, sell all your belongings and move to Europe. What you do need to do is that you need to make one choice every day that brings you closer and closer to what that goal is. And it just has to be that one thing, but it will build on itself and it will become the biggest thing, that change that you're supposed to make. So that taking that leap, that big, beautiful, real leap, is something you can feel confident about and that you know that you will be successful. But that first step is going to be the hardest step, just like my first step was my hardest step. But you will be running on the elliptical machine in no time.
That is nailed. All right, Katie, you can find Katie at Katie C. McKenna, KatiecMcKenna.com, and also on Instagram and Twitter at Katie C. McKenna. Katie, thank you so much for joining me today.
This was such a joy. I'm so, so grateful. Thank you so much.
Don't forget to hit up the online printing rock stars at printdirtcheap.com and use promo code LifeHunter for $10 off. Hey, Life Hunters, thank you for listening to this episode of Go Hunt Life. If you like the show and would like to support it, go to iTunes and do this. Subscribe to the show, leave a rating, and review it. It helps, and thank you. If you or someone that you know has quit their normal life to follow their dreams, I would love an introduction and maybe interview them on the show. You can find me at gohuntlife.com and also on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Pinterest at Go Hunt Life. Until next time, stay weird, dare greatly, and ripcord out.